The Honorable Judge Cooper in Leon County, Florida, has handed the ACC another L in court.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch each and every day. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. On this episode, we will talk about a new prediction for the record of every single ACC football team for next year. Is your team rated too high, too low? Are you going to complain? Are you going to say, you know what, those 24/7 guys know what they're talking about? So with all these court proceedings, we are going to talk about how close we could be at this point with Florida State versus the ACC, Clemson versus the ACC. Are we anywhere close to resolution, whether that's a ruling or settlements? But we do have to talk about the latest W for Florida State in court in their home state of Florida, Leon County, Florida. Now, Kenton, we predict this was not easy, not difficult to predict, I should say, but we did predict this on yesterday's episode that Judge John C. Cooper would deny the ACC's motion to dismiss and allow this case in Florida to continue while another case is in progress in North Carolina. And predictably, and I'm not saying he's wrong, we'll talk about the judge's logic here, but predictably, Judge Cooper did deny the ACC's motion to dismiss on Wednesday, or on Tuesday, I should say.
In the words of Dionne Warwick, surprise, surprise, right? Like, how shocked is anybody by this ruling being handed down? We all knew that this was going to be the way that this was going to go. I mean, for a multitude of reasons. Again, even if we ignore the home cooking angle of this, we could just talk about the fact that Florida State was allowed to recraft their argument and bring it back. Now, I don't know about you, Donno, but if I were given a redo at some of my worst moments in life, at a moment that was a pivotal, you can do this the right way, you can do this the wrong way, or it'll cost you moments. If I was given a multi-million-dollar do-over, I'm going to make damn sure I do it right. That's not a surprise that Florida State did lay out a more coherent, more plain language argument that ultimately the Judge Cooper, the Honorable Judge Cooper in Leon County said, hey, we're going to hear this out. This was not a hearing to say whether or not the case is or is not over. That was not the principle of this. This was a case this was an argument, a battle about whether or not this legal proceeding could even begin. And that, to me, it was obvious it was going to go this way. You and I have talked about this a lot, that there's a lot of sensationalism going on around court, that everybody imagines they're going to have their their Perry Mason moment. Everybody imagines they're going to have their Carisi in Law and Order SVU. I know he was the worst DA in SVU. I get it. We all like Alex Moore, but you get the point. I know that we all thought that there was going to be a Monk moment where it's like, we solved the case. It's over now. That's not how court works in real life. This is the beginning, or not the beginning, but these are some of the earlier stages of this battle. And that's just what this is. So I'm not surprised by Judge Cooper's decision. Again, I expect for all of these cases to go on for quite some time. And I would be shocked. And I'm saying this right here on air. With everything I know about it and the folks who work in legal that I've had look into this, and by the way, the people I had looking at this in legal, they don't even know anything about sports. They're the type of people that's like, wait, so a touchdown is how many points? Looking at this case, I have heard that this thing will most likely be going on into, at earliest, mid-2025, maybe 2026. That was when I was told, hey, by then you could see all four of these cases be over. That's not a guarantee. So, with that in mind, this case going on as expected, I mean, hey, not a shocker, not a surprise. Donno, you and I both agreed on this. Here we are. Let's put up your dukes and get ready to defend yourself, Florida State and the ACC.
Yeah, and with the judge denying the ACC's motion to dismiss in Florida on Tuesday, this was expected, but it's still a victory for Florida State, because to have this case get heard in Florida If this case had been dismissed, they would be, at the mercy of the ACC's home territory in North Carolina. So this is obviously big for Florida State. Here's some of the details as written in both the Tallahassee Democrat and the Tampa Bay Times. Let's start from the Tallahassee Democrat. After lengthy arguments from FSU and the ACC, Judge Cooper ruled in favor of FSU on the issue of personal jurisdiction. Now, there were two others that he ruled in favor of Florida State, but personal jurisdiction, Kenton, I was watching some of this streaming on Tuesday. They spent about 4 hours talking about this and presenting arguments. And the judge had mentioned at the top of the hearing that they were going to spend minutes presenting arguments. That went 60 minutes times 4 yesterday. So personal jurisdiction, which refers to the court's authority to hand out decisions on a person or party in a legal case, a pivotal ruling in the school's legal battle with the conference. So the ACC, trying to dismiss it, was saying, hey, Florida State can't sue us in Florida because our business is done in North Carolina. It can only proceed there. Florida State's argument is, no, we conduct our business here in Florida, and so do you conduct a lot of your business here. So this can only take place in Florida. That's the argument. And obviously, Judge Cooper sides more with FSU. Judge Cooper said, quote, I have found that the complaint effectively alleges that the ACC operates a significant business in Florida, the complaint referring to Florida State's complaint, so that they conduct significant business in Florida. Of course, talking about, he continued by saying he hasn't seen the percentages of what revenue is paid to member schools in the revenue sharing plan. Judge Cooper said you don't have to have an office or agency in the state of Florida to be a business, citing the ACC's broadcasting of FSU and Miami home games as business. So the judge is saying, hey, you can't say you don't do business here when you clearly do business in this state. So we must see this here.
Yeah, and I think that is, again, I don't know the legal standing or precedence for that in terms of whether or not that's legitimate. What I do know is, looking at this case, I knew this was going to go on. This was how this was going to go forward. Again, if this was going to be a situation where Cooper was going to deny this, the writing would have been on the wall. We would have heard something along the lines of, hey, by the way, it's not looking good for FSU. They're looking for some way to settle. They're looking to withdraw. I hadn't heard anything from either side. So I'm, this case going on in this situation, it's not really, not only, yes, this is a win for Florida State in that you didn't take the ultimate loss in this moment, but this win just means you get to step into the ring. It doesn't mean that there's been a final bell yet. It doesn't mean that anybody's been on the mat and getting their standing 8 count yet. That's not what this means. This means that you are able to get in the ring. You're able to lace them up. You're able to get into this competition with one another to see, hey, who comes out on top? Legally, who is in the right, who is in the wrong? That's where we are with this thing. And to say that this is a win for Florida State is correct. But again, to say that this is the final win, or to say that this is the dinosaur in Jurassic Park, the T-Rex in Jurassic Park coming to shake the water up, you may not be exactly accurate in that assertion.
Yeah, we're really, you said it earlier, we're closer to the beginning than we are to the end, I believe, unless there's some surprise breakthrough in mediation or one of the two sides decides to settle. I think eventually we'll get to a settlement. I don't think we're anywhere close to that. We're closer to the beginning than to the end. So basically, when we talk about this victory for Florida State, the victory is we still get to hear our lawsuit heard in our friendly venue in Leon County, Florida. We haven't even begun discovery yet. Like we're nowhere close, in my opinion, to a resolution. This is as written in the Tampa Bay Times. Cooper also denied the ACC's motion to dismiss the second and third counts of FSU's lawsuit. Those were complaints that the ACC's $140 million exit fee is unenforceable and that the ACC violated its constitution and bylaws. The other arguments will be made in writing in the coming days. So he didn't have time, the judge, to lay all that down because they spent so much time talking about personal jurisdiction. They're like, Judge, you could just email us the rest. They couldn't stay late in the courtroom. They had to get the hell out of there.
Of course. Those are government buildings. And obviously the next day was a holiday. Okay. It's a federally recognized holiday in Juneteenth. Shout out to all those who have fought, struggled, and died for that. Now, with that in mind, this is again, very much so a moment where there needs to be an importance. There needs to be an onus placed on, again, This is a win for Florida State, make no bones about it, because I believe that the Mecklenburg County case against Florida State was basically the judge there had ruled, hey, we are not moving forward until that case gets figured out or until we figure out what's going on there. So that to me,
it's because there was an appeal to the North Carolina Supreme Court, so they're not going to continue in Mecklenburg until the Supreme Court rules on an appeal. It seems like it's like the process in North Carolina compared to the one in Florida. They're both moving slowly, but the one in Florida seems to be moving a little quicker.
Gotcha. My bad. Well, the home of NASCAR is moving slow. What an ironic moment. But in all seriousness, again, this is a moment where you're looking at and saying, hey, this is a win for Florida, because as the timelines move along, the case in Leon County will have the chance to set a precedent where there is not one here. Yeah. And again, it's hard to overturn those. It's hard to get, Donno and I have talked about on this show before. We don't get political, but we are aware of political realities. And the political reality is, depending on where you are, depending on who's ruling on a case, laws can be interpreted very differently. Two judges, two lawyers, two sets of plaintiffs, defendants, whatever, can look at the exact same law in a very similar, if not exact same situation, and come out with two entirely different outcomes. So you're absolutely right that it's a definite advantage to have the case where you feel like the court will be friendlier to you moving forward at a more accelerated pace than the other.
Yeah, no, I was watching a podcast, a YouTube podcast shortly after this motion to dismiss was denied. And I was surprised that a lawyer who was being interviewed said he was surprised that everything's moving this slowly. He said he thought it was, back in December when the lawsuits were filed, he thought that Florida State would be far enough along that by August 15th, which is the deadline to announce to the ACC, hey, we're out of the conference by the following football season. By August 15th, 2024, you would have to announce we're out in 2025. Now he no longer thinks that there's going to be resolution by then. And listen, I'm not a lawyer. He is, but I'm honestly not surprised that this is taking a long time, because Kenton, you and I have gone on record saying this for months, that this is going to take a while.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm backing off of that. I don't think you're backing off of that. I think we can both agree that this case is going to be going forward for quite some time. I know that everybody would like for it to be rushed, and trust me, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart and soul. If you don't think that Donno and I wish that this thing was moving faster, you don't know either one of us very well. We don't have a layer of head to protect our thoughts from your view. But in all seriousness, Donno and I both want to talk ball. We want to talk the fun stuff. We want to talk the predictions, the who's going to be the player of the year. That's what we want to talk. But instead, we have to talk, hey, what's going on in this ruling? What's going on in this settlement? Who's going on here? What's going on? That's not fun. It's not fun, because that then puts us in the legal seat, which, and correct me if I'm wrong, Donno, you don't have a law degree. I don't have a law degree. You've never practiced law at a high level. I've never practiced law at a high level. Neither one of us, besides jury duty or something like that, have ever had experience dealing with the law at a deep level.
I have been a jury foreman, and a darn good one.
Hey, best jury foreman in the land, Alex Donno, ladies and gentlemen. You know what I mean? I don't hit him up for his services, okay? He's a busy man. He does not have time to be sequestered and all that good stuff to y'all cases. But, that's the reality of this. We want to talk ball, but this is something that, again, it's not going to be as fast. If Donno and I could snap our fingers and make this thing Judge Judy-ish, good. Get to the ending. Let's see her tell whoever that they're a bad person, that they're a liar, a cheat, and a scammer, and rule in the other person's favor. That's not how real life court works, people. So we're going to be here talking about this for quite some time.
Well, we are going to talk some ball when we come back, because 24/7 Sports has predicted the overall records and the conference records of every football team in the ACC this coming year. We got 17, as long as we can hold on to Florida State and Clemson until football season. I think we have 17 teams next year. How are they all going to finish? We'll find out. Let's keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Alex Donno from Locked On Canes alongside Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. So, Kenton, 24/7 Sports has predicted overall records, conference records for every football team in the ACC next year. Tell me if you agree with their bottom dwellers. Let's go from worst records to best records for next year. So they've got UVA at 2-10, 0-8 in conference. Wow. They've got Stanford at 3-9, 1-7 in conference, and they've got Boston College at 3-9, 1-7 in conference. I mean, first of all, with UVA, it's like, you don't think they're going to sneak up on somebody, like get one conference win? And with Boston College, maybe you and I are just too big of Thomas Castellanos fanboys, but I feel like they're going to be a little better than 3-9 this year.
So here's the thing. I don't think that these teams will be sneaking up on a bunch of folks, but nobody? Like, they don't get one? They don't get – that's a little tough for me to believe. And not only – to call us Castellanos fanboys, as Donno so affectionately labeled us, I disagree. I think that we are believers in what we have seen. And we have seen it. We've seen with our own two eyes Thomas Castellanos win a game for that team. We have seen their running backs average less than 4 yards a carry, no wide receiver catch for over 80 yards, and yet they won that football game. How? Because Thomas Castellanos, I believe against Army, he rushed for 4 touchdowns. That's the type of talent you're dealing with. So I find it hard to believe they don't get one in conference. They don't sneak up on anybody.
Well, no, they did say what for BC. They said 1-7. 1-7 for BC. Okay. UVA 0-8.
Now, and here's my only problem with that. UVA, it's all up to them how good or bad they want to be. And I know that sounds very vague, but let me make this very clear for you, okay? In terms of how good and how bad they want to be, if they keep playing around with this, oh, we don't know who our quarterback is. Oh, we don't know what we want to do. They are going to end up in a very, very bad situation where they might even lose at Coastal Carolina. I mean that with everything in my heart and soul. This team needs to ride with their guy immediately. Tony Calandra is your quarterback of the future. You cannot win football games at UVA right now with a game manager. That is just not the case. If this were a differently assembled team, if this were a team where I'm like, hey, you got playmakers all over the place. All you need your quarterback to do, don't turn the ball over and you'll be fine. You have
how many games did Kyle McCord win at Ohio State last year? Just managing the offense, but that's certainly not what Virginia has.
No, Virginia don't. Is there a Maserati Marv walking through the door? Is there a Mecca Ibuka walking through the door? Trey Henderson. Anybody got a Trey Henderson in the house? A spare Trey Henderson laying around? No. So with that in mind, I think that the directive should be very simple for UVA. Go with the playmaker. He'll lose you some games. Yes, he will. He's young. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to lose you a game or two. He's also going to win you a game or two. He's also going to do more than he will make the sum greater than the total of his parts. So UVA is all up to them. Boston College, I'm not really surprised there. I mean, I think that they could get a win off Virginia. I will say this. I think that they can also get a win off Michigan State, depending on what that team looks like, because their defensive line is very depleted. And if there's anything that Boston College has loved to do for forever, it is run the damn ball. So if they can do that successfully against Michigan State, they might walk away with another Power 5 win or
Michigan
Power 4
State,
win now.
After the whole Mel Tucker situation, they lost a lot of players out through the transfer portal. You're right about that. So, all right, so other teams in this 24/7 prediction that are still not going to be good according to their predictors. They've got Duke at 4-8 overall, 1-7 in conference. You got a new head coach there, certainly a familiar face for me with Manny Diaz taking over the new quarterback with Malik Murphy taking over for Riley Leonard, who was just spectacular the last couple of years with Duke. They've got Wake Forest at 5-7 and 2-6 in conference, and they've got Pitt not improving much, 5-7 and 2-6 in conference. That's that next group there.
I think that this is so interesting because of that group, none of them are a surprise, really. Not a single one of them is a surprise. As much as I want to give Narduzzi some love and say, hey, Narduzzi can coach him up with the best of them, when your stars are leaving and saying in public, I'm leaving because I don't think we can win, there's a problem. There's something going on here that's not good. Clawson, I feel for him. That the rules are just making it so tough to go in the portal and get people at Wake Forest because they have a different set of rules for transfers in unless they're a grad transfer than every other school does. Fun fact about Wake Forest. Makes Clawson's job that much harder. And Duke with Manny Diaz, I'm going to tell you, you want to talk about players leaving with a coach? Boy, when Elko left, almost everybody who did something worth note for them last year said, all right, I'm out the door right behind you, brother. Hey, it's been real. It's been fun, Durham, but I got to go. So I think that all three of those teams just about right.
Yeah, and I have to wonder with what you said about Narduzzi, the seat's got to be warm for him, right? If not hot, like you've got to be better than 5-7 this year, I think. All right, so the next group, go ahead.
Oh, Pitt is so storied. They're quietly one of the more storied teams in the nation, and so those fans will not take lying down like, okay, you won us a championship a few years ago, great. What have you done for us lately? So I absolutely think if that seat ain't hot yet, it's going to warm up a whole hell of a lot after a 5-7 season this year.
So the next group, these are kind of the meaty part of the curve here, kind of in the middle. They've got Cal at 6-6 overall, 3-5 in the conference. So, that wouldn't be terrible for them in their debut in the ACC. Syracuse at 8-4 overall, but 4-4 in conference. Remember, they don't exactly have a very difficult non-conference schedule, so they've got them winning 8 games, but 4-4 in the ACC, which would be not a bad season for Syracuse. Georgia Tech. At 7-5 overall, 5-3 in conference. And they actually, interestingly enough, Kenton, they have Louisville with the same record as Georgia Tech at 7-5 and 5-3. And, I feel like this is a team a couple months ago. I know there was just a lot of negative vibes, at least from the outsiders, a lot of negative vibes with the way that their spring transfer portal went and, losing some of the players who had just signed to play there in January. But I really feel like the bettors and the predictors have soured pretty quickly on Louisville because they were a couple months ago considered to be, maybe like a top 3, top 4 in the ACC. Now most people have them regressing to the mean.
Here's my only problem with that. They didn't lose guys that were already on their roster that was good last year. They didn't lose a ton in terms of what did they lose from the spring portal to now that we look at and say, man, that guy was predicted to be a guy. And don't get me wrong, Penny Boone was one of those guys. Absolutely. Yeah. Losing a projected starting tackle. That's a loss. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. What I'm saying is this. By and large, even before they got some of those commits, people were super high on Louisville going forward this year. What changed? Don't get me wrong. I understand the perception. I understand in terms of recruiting. And if you want to go years down the line and talk about, hey, are recruits going to feel good about their NIL situation? There's an argument to be made there. I'm not sure it's the most succinct and clear and good argument, but there's an argument to be made there. But this year, I think they'll be just fine. I think they have one of the better defensive fronts in the ACC, if not the nation. I think that they have a wide receiving group that's bringing back some playmakers from last year. Not a ton. Not saying that they're bringing back Jamari Thrash and company, but they still have some playmakers who have proven themselves from last year. The only question I have about Louisville, Tyler Shaw. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And we saw him win with Jack Plummer last year. So that kind of, Jack Plummer wasn't great. He wasn't great. And yet they made the ACC championship. So this is ultimately a situation that I'm looking at and saying to myself, them going down to 7-5 out the blue feels a little herky-jerk.
Well, let's talk about the top 7 when we come back. We're not going anywhere, folks. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked on ACC. All right, so I think Kenton, there's probably a few surprises here in the top 7. Let me give you 7, 6, and 5. Then we'll get to the top 4. They've got Virginia Tech at 8-4. That's like it's hovering right around a lot of like I think their Vegas over under now is 8.5. Virginia Tech has kind of been a riser in the offseason. People are changing their opinions positively about the Hokies. So they got Virginia Tech going 8-4 overall, 5-3 in the ACC. They got North Carolina going 9-3 overall, but 5-3 in the ACC at number 6, and then SMU at 9-3 overall, 6-2 in the ACC. I feel like SMU has just been this media darling, which makes me wonder: are they going to live up to it, making a jump into the Power 4, or is there going to be kind of a rude awakening? Because if they go 9-3 in their first year in the ACC, that would be probably one of the most successful Power 4 jumps I can remember.
That they would be the Vegas Knights of college football, because I mean immediate success right off the bat and what's considered a step up is not normal. Normally, it's a lot like Donno is a big soccer guy. I'm not sure how many who listen to this show are soccer guys, but 9 times out of 10, when teams get promoted, guess who's getting relegated the next year, right?
Right.
That same team. So generally, when teams jump up a level, it shows like, oh man, this is why we weren't on this level. SMU showing up in this way would be nothing short of an amazing story. And I'll tell you what, it's an amazing story that could land Rhett Lashley one of these really big time jobs in a year or two, because I mean, don't get me wrong, SMU is a Power 4 team. They do have Dallas money. They got some money that we don't even know where it's coming from. They just somehow always come up with money for everything they need. But one thing that is clear is Rhett Lashley is a special offensive coach. Their quarterback is a proven talent. He's done good things, but it's proven in the American. So now we're talking about the ACC. What can you do there? And if this group can be that special, you'll see a lot of those Mustangs get drafted in next year, in next year's draft, because objectively they've shown we can do it on every level. We can show out against the best of the best and the ones that you deem a little inferior. The guys that are a little too short, a little too small, a little too slow, not quick enough. We've shown it against everybody.
Now, SMU does have a really easy schedule, so that could aid them a little bit. They have their 3 losses being TCU out of conference, Florida State, and Louisville in conference is what they have there. So let's get into the top 4. You got NC State at number 4 with a 10-2 record and a 7-1 conference record. Now, Kenton, you'd probably be pretty happy with that from your alma mater. Let
me tell you something. This would be a 10-win season from Dave Doeren. Everybody's talking about the ACC championship with some of the things that NC State has done in terms of basketball, not only winning the first ACC championship in the Big 3 sports in about 30 years for NC State, but you're also looking at the women's team going to the Final Four, men's team going to the Final Four, baseball team going to the College World Series. They're looking at Doeren. The eyes are on you now to make an ACC championship happen, or at least a double-digit win season. Right. The way that 24/7 has this playing out is one of the only ways possible that Doeren can have a year where he does not go to the ACC championship. And it's okay. Everybody in Raleigh is still happy. 10 wins, and just like, oh, man, it's just a little bit more against Clemson, or just a little bit more against Tennessee. You'll be fine. You'll be fine with that. The folks in Raleigh will not be calling for your head and saying, hey, there's not enough. But I'm here to tell you today, if he slides below this in that 7-8 win range, that seat's going to start to heat up. Yes, he's been a pillar of consistency in Raleigh. Yes, he'll have all the records in terms of just how long he's coached and done things in Raleigh. It cannot be overstated how hot that seat will get based on an 8-7 win season next year. So this 10 win, perfect for him.
You made a great point that this prediction has them winning 10 games, but not making it to the conference championship. Same thing with Clemson. They've got Clemson at 10-2, 7-1 in conference, no ACC championship because they've got the top 2. Miami at number 2 with 11-1 records and 7-1 conference records, with the regular season loss being Florida State, which is the toughest game on Miami's schedule. Then they've got Florida State also going 11-1 with an 8-0 conference record. They have an out-of-conference game at Notre Dame as Florida State's only loss. They do not predict what would happen in an ACC championship game. Obviously, with them saying that Florida State would beat Miami in Miami, you would expect them to have Florida State beating Miami at a neutral site. But that's who they have as their championship game. Obviously, with Florida State, they've got the proven pedigree, Kenton. They just won the conference 13-0. Regular season and conference championship last year. There are a lot of changes, a lot of new players in Tallahassee, but people give, rightfully so. Mike Norvell gets a lot of equity and benefit of the doubt with what he's done the last couple of years at Florida State. Most people don't give the same benefit of the doubt to Mario Cristobal at Miami,
Absolutely.
but people do acknowledge the talent that Miami has accumulated. And I would imagine anyone who predicts Miami to go 11-1 is thinking Cam Ward under center is probably going to have a pretty spectacular season, that he could be someone that can really carry Miami to what would be their best season in if they win 11 games, that'd be their best season in over 20 years.
So I'm going to backtrack and then go back to where we are for a second here. We skipped over Clemson. And I'm going to tell you this. Doran and Dabo are on an exact opposite type of path here if they both get 10. People are going to be looking at Dabo crazy if he just pulls off 2 straight 10-win seasons that do not result. Neither one results in him and the boys from South Carolina being in the ACC championship. I can guarantee you that sure as the sun rises on the east and sets on the west, because he set that expectation and that level. The standard is the standard. Now, to the 2 teams you just spoke about, the 2 Sunshine State teams, are we going to have an all Sunshine State ACC championship? Absolutely, I can see it happening. But like you said, Cam Ward's going to have to be special. Okay, Rodriguez is going to have to be special. That backfield duo of those 2, it's not good enough for them to be good. And why am I saying that? Because in spring ball, you mentioned multiple times Miami's best back looked to be a freshman tight end.
Elijah Lofton, yeah, that was before Martinez transferred in, and also
Martinez,
Mark Fletcher was injured during spring.
Yeah,
but a freshman tight end was their best running back.
But you get my point, right? Even if we expect everybody to get healthy, and even if we expect everything to go well, if Fletcher and Martinez are just they're going to have a problem. They're going to have a problem. I think that at least one of those guys has to be primetime TV for them to get to where they want to get to with this 11-1 conference championship type of talk. And Cam Ward, we know what Cam Ward is. We've talked about the fact that of all the transfers, and really of every single quarterback in the conference right now, I don't know of a quarterback who has a higher ceiling right now that we would look at in 2024 and say, hey, if you had to bet on anybody to go ahead and bring home that trophy, the one doing the stiff arm, the one I'm talking about, that old Heisman, it has to be Cam. It has to be Cam. But with that being said, he does not have the highest floor. He does have a floor that kind of, it scares you because it's like, he does have that tendency to be a one read and go guy at times. He does have a tendency to play hero ball, do his best Justin Field impression where it's like, I can make something out of this. And it's like, brother, throw the ball away. Take a sack. You'll be all right. So, if Miami gets there, Cristobal cools off immensely. Everything looks good in Miami. Norvell, however, they're ready to build a statue. And I know what people are going to say. Oh, Florida State's that story that they wouldn't build a statue off of 2 conference championships. I want you to just consider something for just a second for me, okay? Outside of Bowden, how many great coaches do you think about from Florida State?
It's a great point. Nope, nobody. I mean, Jimbo Fisher won one. I think there are mixed opinions on Jimbo, but outside of Bobby's the guy. I mean, and listen, and I'm a Miami guy, and I have nothing but respect for Bobby Bowden. I always respected that man.
But the way that things crashed and burned after Jimbo, the way that the program was left, anybody who's paid close attention to Florida State knows that a lot of things that were placed on Taggart's shoulders were actually byproducts of Jimbo's failings on his way out.
Yeah.
That's just a factual statement. A lot of situations in terms of, they weren't booking team hotels properly, they weren't doing this and that properly. Those were byproducts of the fact that Mr. Fisher did not set these situations up properly before he left. And when he left, people left with him were retired who were responsible for doing these things that Taggart walked into like, wait, where's all the infrastructure? I'm at a Power 5 school and I don't have, So with that being said, if Norvell is to pull off a season like this, a second back-to-back ACC championship, a playoff bid, and if he makes some noise in that playoff, I'm not saying that he's on the level of a Bobby Bowden. I'm saying that he then goes into that pantheon where it's like, we're going to build him a statue outside the stadium one of these days. It may be named Bobby Bowden Stadium one day. That may happen. But it will have a statue of him, or at least a plaque somewhere acknowledging Mike Norvell and what he did at Florida State, brought us out of very dark times, returned us to prosperity, all the good things.
I think they do. The stadium is Doak Campbell, but if I'm Florida State fans will definitely correct me if I'm wrong. I think the field is named after Bowden, so they'll find something. They'll name the concessions after Norvell.
They'll find something to name after. The indoor facility, the third indoor facility. You can't never have too many indoor facilities now down there. The third one that simulates
Big Ten money. When the Big Ten money is rolling in, they'll have another indoor.
Let me tell you, the one that simulates cold weather. The one that simulates the snow and the rain, because that's where we're headed now. We're headed to 4D football. Yeah. That one is going to be named after Norvell, but he'd rightfully deserve it because and this is no disrespect to Florida State's history. This is, again, they're one of the most storied programs. They have the huge brand. They deserve the huge national brand. I was a kid growing up in Detroit, Michigan, Big Ten country, who knew about Florida State and how special, how big time they were. So this is not a disrespect to them. And this is a respect to Mike Norvell in saying, winning 2 back-to-back, going 2 seasons without a loss in conference, you're the guy. You're it at that point.
Well, we had a great time today. Tune in again tomorrow. He's Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I'm Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. We'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.